I'm going to show you how to make brownies. Of course, the first thing you're going to need is your boxed brownie mix. This is Duncan Hines dark chocolate fudge brownie mix. Okay then. I guess we're not making brownies today.
If you're watching this video, you probably also have a problem with buying too many knives. Over the last year, I've bought so many pocket knives that I've more than doubled my collection since last year. I figured it was time to do a knife collection update video. So as of November 2019, this is my knife collection.
This is my blue-handled case sodbuster. It has Tru-Sharp stainless steel blade and blue Delrin handles. This was the first traditional knife that I bought as an adult. This was the knife that started my love affair with slip joint knives, pretty much. The Benchmade 300-1. I believe the -1 is for the blue and black handle scales. This was the first and only Benchmade that I own. This knife has a flipper which doesn't work very well with Benchmade's access lock, and I believe this is the only flipper that they ever made with an access lock. The knife is in 154 cm steel, and it is a heavy knife. It's also a rather large knife. This is the first Kershaw Shuffle I ever bought. It was originally black with a satin blade. I kind of ruined this knife by spray painting the handle scales olive drab and trying to polish the blade, which didn't go very well. The Kershaw Shuffle, this was the first knife that I really started carrying all the time. It started it for me pretty much. It was like a $13 knife at the time, and I think you can get it on Amazon for like 12 bucks or something like that. The Case Mini Blackhorn. It's a really small little lockback folding knife. The blade is made out of Case's Tru-Sharp stainless steel and is probably somewhere around 2 inches. The handle's made out of Zytel or glass reinforced nylon or some other fancy word for plastic. It has a little lanyard hole, and the knife seems to be put together pretty well. It's held together with 2 pins. I could see this knife being a good knife for somebody who lives in a big city or somewhere else where people are afraid of larger knives, but they still want to have a locking blade. This is the Great Eastern Cutlery, model number 97, Allegheny. It's a large Coke bottle pattern, and this one is in the beaver tail trim, which means it has jigged Brazilian cherry covers, that cool beaver shield, and it says beaver tail on the blade. This is a huge knife, and it's very pretty. So both of those things being said, I haven't carried it a whole lot, just because I really like the way it looks and I don't want it to get messed up. I'm sure eventually I'll get past that because I really like the knife and I probably should carry and use it and enjoy it like all my other knives, but it's just so pretty. But anyway, it's got the normal 1095 carbon steel for Great Eastern Cutlery, jigged Brazilian cherry covers, like I said, and, probably one of the few knives that I haven't really carried. The Great Eastern Cutlery, number 44, Gunstock Jack in Gabon Ebony. This knife has a clip point main blade and a pen blade secondary. Both blades are made out of 1095 carbon steel, so they will patina, stain, and rust. This knife is just the right size to disappear in your pocket to not bother you. The main blade is under 3 inches, so it's legal a lot of places that larger knives are not. So the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, this has become my favorite modern locking folder. I love the compression lock, and the S30V steel seems to hold an edge for pretty much ever. The knife is comfortable to hold and to use. The front finger choil is definitely nice. The Spidey hole allows me to flick it open with either my middle finger or my thumb quite easily. And this knife has spent a lot of time in my pocket since I bought it.
My case, Sodbuster Jr. As some of you may know, the Sodbuster Jr. and regular Sodbuster doesn't come in CV with the Delrin unless you get the yellow Delrin. So when I got this knife, it was yellow Delrin, and I just dyed it blue with some synthetic RIT dye yesterday. And you have to use the synthetic RIT dye because the regular RIT dye doesn't work, because I tried that. So anyway, the Sodbuster Jr. has a knife blade under 3 inches. It's a slip joint knife. This one is in Case's carbon chrome vanadium steel, which is what I prefer when it comes to Case. So yeah, the Case Sodbuster Jr. This is the Svord Peasant. It's a friction folder made in New Zealand. Since it's a friction folder, it doesn't have a lock or a back spring. The knife is held open with the friction between the blade and the handle. I went for the neon green handled one, like I do most of the time when that's an option. The blade is made out of some sort of carbon steel. I forget exactly what kind of carbon steel it is, but it doesn't really matter that much. This is a fairly large knife. If you're planning on carrying one of these, they make a Svord Mini, which is what I would recommend. I had no idea how large this knife was actually going to be, and if I was going to buy one again, I would buy the Svord Mini. My purple Ontario Rat 1 in D2 steel. I originally bought the tan handled one, and then I dyed the handle scales with purple synthetic RIT dye so that I could have a purple handled Rat 1. This one was the $40 D2 model, which is what I would recommend over the AUS 8 model. I have owned both of them, and I definitely appreciate the D2 more than the AUS 8. This is the Camillus TL29, or electrician's knife. It has a main spear point blade. Mine is pretty well sharpened down. And it has a secondary screwdriver blade. The secondary screwdriver blade locks open using a brass liner lock. Both the blades are made out of carbon steel. The handle is made out of some sort of plastic-ish type material. It might be some sort of Bakelite or something. Opinel number 8 in the carbon steel. It's gained the name the Ruined Opinel because of my soldering iron work on the wooden handle. This knife has a very thin blade, so it slices really well, and a collar that rotates to lock the blade in the open position. If you've never owned an Opinel, I would suggest buying one. This one cost me $15, and you can get them cheaper on Amazon, and it's definitely a knife that I think most people should experience. So this is one of those Walmart Ozark Trail knives that you can buy for like $5. I walked past the little spinning display that they have the one night, and I saw this like slip joint knife with the fake plastic stag covers, and I was like, I'll buy that for $5. So yeah, the blades are made out of stainless steel, and it's probably steel. It's one of my Case Barlows. I have two. This one is the Smooth Antique Bone single blade with a spear point blade, and the blade is stainless True Sharp steel. When Case announced that they were releasing the Barlow for 2019, I knew that I wanted one, and I actually ended up buying two, and 2019's not over yet, so I might end up with another one or two of them. I don't know yet, but this is the first Case Barlow I bought. This is the other Case Barlow that I have. This one is the Brown Bone Saw Cut Barlow in the chrome vanadium steel. This one is a two-bladed Barlow, and it's kind of a throwback to an old Case knife. I've seen pictures of a Barlow from the 1970s that looked kind of similar to this with the Case stamping on the bolster. So, yeah.
This is a old Barlow knife made by a company called York Cutlery out of Solingen, or however that's pronounced, Germany. It's a Barlow featuring two blades, a main clip point and a secondary pen blade. I picked this knife up at a farmer's market or a flea market for like $10. The covers are made out of, I can't tell really if it's bone or if it's some sort of synthetic material. But the knife overall, I really like the way it's constructed. The back springs on it are incredibly strong. And I just wanted to buy it to have an example of what an old Barlow knife would be like. This is my purple case sodbuster in chrome vanadium. This knife started off as yellow, just like my Sodbuster Jr., and I dyed it with some purple RIT dye to make the knife more appealing to me. Of course, I prefer cases chrome vanadium steel, and it's nice to have a full-size sodbuster in chrome vanadium. Victorinox Classic SD. It's spent the past year on my keys. It has a small knife blade, a nail file, and flathead screwdriver, a pair of scissors, which is why I bought this, a toothpick, and tweezers. The toothpick, tweezers, and the scissors come in handy all the time, so I'm always glad that I have this knife on my keys. The CRKT Pilar. It's a small knife that has definitely gotten a lot of attention in the YouTube knife community. The blade is made out of 8CR13 MOV. The handle is made out of stainless steel. It's a frame lock. The blade is well under 3 inches. And it's just a comfortable knife to hold, and it's a very small knife to carry. An old Camillus Camp knife that I recently picked up at a flea market the same day that I bought that York Cutlery Barlow. The whole reason I wanted this knife was for that old style can opener. I don't know how to date this knife, and I don't know when it's from, but that can opener was the one before the quote-unquote safety can opener came around. Anyway, as you can see, the main blade used to be a spear point blade. It's been sharpened quite a few times. The blade does have a little bit of side-to-side play that it just kind of got over the years, I assume. The covers, I can't really tell if they're synthetic or they're bone. But yeah, it's just a neat little knife that I found at a flea market, and the guy wanted $5 for it. And I was more than willing to pay $5 for this example of an old Camillus Camp knife, especially with that cool old can opener. Ka-Bar Dozier. It's one of my favorite super budget knives. You can get these for under $20 all day. This one has blue handles, and the handles are made out of Zytel or glass-filled nylon or some other fancy word for plastic. The blade is a drop point and is just about 3 inches long. It's hollow ground, so it slices well. It has a thumb stud that you can switch to either side of the knife. The blade is fairly thick, so it doesn't feel like it's going to break. It is a back lock. It has a tip-up carry pocket clip. There's no liners in the handles of this knife, which make it fairly lightweight and easy to carry, but the knife does not feel flimsy in any way. And the steel that is used in this knife is AUS 8. The Kershaw Copper Natrix. The handle scales are made out of copper. The blade is D2, and this is the size of the mini Natrix. The knife's made in China. It deploys with a flipper. It's a KVT ball bearing system instead of Kershaw's Speed Safe Assist. And it just looks like a really cool knife. Of course, what knife collection is complete without a Buck 110? The Buck 110 has a blade made out of 420 HC steel with that Boss heat treat. The frame is completely made out of brass with wooden handle inlays. And that being said, this knife weighs like half a pound. It feels heavier than that, but it only weighs half a pound. Only. Of course, the Buck 110 is featured with its main companion in life, a cup of black camp coffee. And the Buck 110 is just a classic pocket knife. This is a Barlow made by Novelty Cutlery Co., which is owned by Smoky Mountain Knife Works and produced in China. This is what they call a bombshell Barlow, which means it has a little bit of pinup art on it. Both of the covers have this, I guess it's probably paper underneath some plastic that has a pinup girl on it. And the only reason I bought this knife is just because I thought that was kind of cool. And I've always been kind of into pinup art. This is an old Imperial knife back when they were made in the United States. I'm not really sure what pattern this is. It's got two blades. The one's a clip point, the other one's a pen blade. The knife is pretty small. I don't know if you would call this a peanut. It might be a peanut. I'm not really sure. But anyway, it's got some fake mother of pearl handles. It says sample knife on it, which I don't know what the hell that means. But yeah, it's got carbon steel blades. Both blades have half stops. And it's, a cute little knife. The Rake P801. It's a flipper frame lock knife. The handle scales are made out of stainless steel. And the blade is made out of 14C28N Sandvik steel, which holds an edge somewhere around what VG10 does. The knife looks pretty good, and it's very high value. This knife, you can get it for around $30, and it has a ball bearing pivot, I believe, and the action on the knife is really smooth. And, I think this knife is well worth the $30. The Spyderco Resilience. It's basically a large Tenacious. I believe it's part of the Tenacious line. It has a 4.5-inch blade. And this was my first Spyderco that I ever had. My friend got it for me for, I think, my birthday last year. So I've had this for about a year now. But yeah, I just enjoy the pure ridiculousness of the 4.5-inch blade. It is, of course, a liner lock, and the blade is made out of 8CR13 MOV, just like a Tenacious. And it's just a very large, ridiculous knife. The CRKT Minimalist. This is set up as a neck knife out of the package, meaning you wear it around your neck in a Kydex or plastic, probably, sheath. You can also carry it on your belt. They supply a clip for that. It's made out of some sort of cheap Chinese steel. It's made in China. And it's a very small little fixed-bladed knife that is actually very comfortable to hold. Some kind of Pakistani-made lockback knife with a brass frame and wooden scales. It says it's a little ugly, so I definitely relate with that. I don't know anything about this knife, but it cost me $2 at a gun store in their miscellaneous junk bin, and I figured for $2 it was worth it. And this is another Barlow made by Cutmaster out of Utica, New York. It features two blades, a main spear point blade and a secondary pen blade. Both blades are made out of carbon steel, as are the bolsters. The covers are made out of some cheap plastic material. And this is another one of those knives that I bought back when I was a child at a flea market or farmer's market over the years. The Ganzo Firebird FH61. It's this neat looking little knife. It looks kind of like a rhinoceros in my opinion. It's got these neat bluish gray handles, and the blade is made out of D2. It deploys with a flipper. It is a liner lock, and the handles are made out of G10. Overall, I just bought this knife because I thought it looked cool, and it actually kind of impressed me by the way this knife was built. It seems to be put together really well. Better than my FH51 was put together. Of course, I actually like both of those knives, but I like this one a little bit more. The Imperial IMP22L. The L stands for large. This is a sodbuster type knife made by Imperial, which is owned by Taylor Brands in China. It's a Chinese made knife. The blade is made out of 7CR, I believe. It's a drop point. The back spring on this knife is actually really strong. The knife kind of almost has a half stop. It's not a real half stop, but it like stops itself in the middle. Brass pins, brass pivot pin. It's got a little shield that's made out of brass that says Imperial. The blade has no play. It seems pretty well put together. The edge grind on this knife sucked when I got it, so I had to try to fix that, which didn't go very well, but I got it to a point where it's usable for sharpening and all that. The handle scales or covers I did with a soldering iron to add texture to them because it's a like $9 knife and I wanted to try some stuff out. And this is the Imperial IMP-22Y. I'm not sure what the Y stands for, maybe like youth or something. I know that's the way it is with a lot of rifles that are shorter. But anyway, this is like the size of a Case Sodbuster Junior. The steel's made out of, I think it's 7CR, just like the bigger one. And, you know, it's basically a Sodbuster knife. The construction is brass pins. It has a Delrin or plastic handle that's yellow. And it is quite yellow. I know it's kind of hard to tell because of the sun. You know, brass pins. It has that cool shield that says Imperial. And, you know, overall this knife is another knife that's less than $10. And for a knife to get you into traditional knives, or maybe see if you like a Sodbuster design, this is a good knife for that. This was the first Case Trapper I ever bought. It's in Case's True Sharp stainless steel with Bermuda green jigged bone. And this is part of the Pocket Worn series. Immediately this knife caught my eye in the knife case at Cabela's, so I had to buy it, and that started my interest in trappers. The Kershaw Shuffle with purple handle scales and a black washed blade. The blade is in 8CR13 MOV, and this knife also has a bottle opener and a flathead screwdriver. It's a liner locking knife, and it is a very small knife. I took the pocket clip off of mine because it only comes tip up carry, which with this knife design just doesn't work very well with the bottle opener and the screwdriver poking you in the hand as you try to pull it out of your pocket. It's a Sodbuster type knife made by a Chinese company called Kissing Crane. There's some controversy about Kissing Crane and Robert Class and all that. So I think this is kind of like a rip-off company of the original Kissing Crane or Robert Class or whatever. I don't really know anything about that. I just heard something about that recently. But this is, I believe, a Kissing Crane Pocket Farmer is what they call it. Except for this one's a little bit bigger than the standard Pocket Farmer, but not as big as a large Case Sodbuster. This one has black wooden handles and says Black Angus on the blade. And the blade, I think, is some sort of 440 stainless. The Victorinox Pioneer. This is probably my favorite Swiss Army knife that I own. It has those aluminum A-LOX scales, which make the knife feel very solid. The blade steel isn't necessarily the best, but it is super stainless. I like having all the tools of a Swiss Army knife in one little compact package. You know, I have a knife blade, a can opener, a bottle opener, flathead screwdriver. It's just kind of nice to have. And I normally carry either this knife or my Tinker in my pocket. This is the Great Eastern Cutlery number 21 Bullbuster. It's a Sodbuster pattern knife. This is the larger one, the 71's the smaller one. The steel is 1095 carbon steel, like all the other Great Eastern Cutlery knives that I own. This one is in olive drab linen micarta, and it's assembled really well, just like all the other Great Eastern Cutlery knives. The Rake L11, it's a modern slip joint knife with 12 C27 steel and G10 handle scales. This knife is what I would consider to be a modern Sodbuster, and I like it quite a bit. It has a pocket clip on it, so it doesn't rummage around in the bottom of your pocket and turn sideways and get uncomfortable. The blade steel seems to hold an edge for a pretty reasonable amount of time. And overall, I just really enjoy this knife.
This is the Kershaw model number 1776, or the Kershaw Link. It's a SpeedSafe assisted full-size flipper folder knife. This is both my first Kershaw SpeedSafe knife and my first full-size Kershaw. This knife is made in the United States of America, and it has a little flag on the side of it there. The handles are anodized aluminum, and they're anodized in blue. It has a black washed blade, and overall I think the knife looks pretty cool. The blade itself is in 420HC steel. The Byrd Kara 2. Spyderco owns Byrd, and Byrd makes super budget knives in China. This knife cost me $20 and is the equivalent to the Spyderco Endura, except for it's like a fourth the price. This knife costs $20. The Spyderco Endura is more around like $80. And this knife has 8CR13 MOV steel instead of the VG10. But honestly, for the price difference, it's not something I really care about.
The Great Eastern Cutlery, number 93, Ram's Foot. I picked this up at my local knife dealer here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, called Country Knives. Once again, I probably overpaid for this knife like I did for all of my other Great Eastern Cutlery knives. But once again, I don't really care. Apparently this knife was super popular and kind of hard to get, so I don't mind overpaying for it at all. It really caught my eye when Great Eastern Cutlery posted pictures of this on their Instagram, and I knew that I really wanted one, so I went and got it. This one's in the canvas micarta. It came in a couple other cover options as well. I think I probably would have chosen the canvas micarta even if I would have had a choice. So I'm pretty happy with the cover material. The blade steel on this knife is 1095 carbon, just like the rest of my Great Eastern Cutlery knives.
My Case Canoe in the amber jig bone and the chrome vanadium steel. I bought this knife to try out the canoe pattern and kind of decided that I didn't really like it that much, but I do like this knife. I like the etching on the main blade, and of course I like Case's chrome vanadium steel. The Victorinox Tinker. The Victorinox Tinker is the same size as the Pioneer, although the blade is a little bit smaller in every dimension, as is the bottle opener. This knife also has tweezers and a toothpick, unlike the Pioneer. And this knife has the classic plastic red handles that Victorinox is known for. This knife is a little bit less scary looking than the Pioneer, in my personal opinion, because of the red plastic handles. Everybody sees this and knows it's a Swiss Army knife. The Schrade Old Timer Sharp Finger. I believe the blade is made out of 7CR17 or something like that. The blade is a very good shape for skinning, I would assume. I haven't really used this knife a whole lot. It was a impulse buy because I wanted a fixed blade, but I didn't really know anything about fixed blades at the time. And I definitely don't ever carry this anymore. If I decide I need a fixed blade knife, I usually grab my $10 Mora. And this is another knife that I bought from a flea market when I was a child. It seems to be kind of a Stockman pattern. I'm not really sure what you would call this, but it kind of reminds me of a Stockman pattern. It has a main clip point blade, a secondary spay blade, and then it has a reamer or a punch or an awl, whatever you want to call that. The knife on the main blade has stamped Hammer brand. Not sure if that's a knife company or perhaps a retailer or something. The knife's assembled like most of the old Imperial knives, where the sides are kind of like hubcaps, kind of. Held on with metal tabs. And it's got some synthetic looking material in the middle. I guess it's supposed to look like acrylic I assume. But, it doesn't seem to be put together all that badly, and, it was probably a rather affordable knife back in the day. The Schrade Old Timer Barlow. This is the new Schrade, not the old Schrade, so it's actually made by Taylor Brands in China. The blades are made out of some sort of Chinese stainless steel. I think it might be 7CR or something like that. The knife actually seems to be put together pretty well. The saw-cut Delrin handles, I think, look pretty nice. And considering this knife was under $10, I actually kind of like this knife. This is the only Rough Rider knife I own, and this is some sort of weird one-arm locking Barlow type thing. I bought it because it was interesting. The blade steel's some sort of 440 stainless, probably 440A, and the handle scales, or the covers, are bone.
My Imperial Trapper. This is about the same size as a Case Mini Trapper. The blades are made out of some sort of cheap stainless steel, probably 3CR or maybe 5CR. The handle scales or covers are made out of a synthetic material that actually looks pretty nice. It's like a marbled material, brown and a couple other colors, but that looks pretty nice. The back springs on this knife seem good. The blades don't have any blade play. And overall, this is a knife that cost me less than $10, and it's definitely worth the price of that.
The Buck 345 Vantage Large, meaning it's the bigger one. It's a knife that can be had on Amazon for $30. I spent $40 on it, but whatever. It has Buck's 420HC steel, which Buck is really good at heat treating with that Paul Boss heat treat. The handles are made out of glass reinforced nylon or something similar. It's a liner lock and it's a flipper. The flipper that deploys the blade isn't very big. I wish it was a little bit bigger. A yellow synthetic Case Trapper in chrome vanadium steel instead of their stainless True Sharp steel. The chrome vanadium is a carbon steel and it will stain and stuff, as you can see. The yellow synthetic handles are not my favorite, and at some point I'm going to be picking up one of these Case Trappers in the chrome vanadium steel, but with some sort of bone handle covers. So one of those might be in this video. I don't know when this video is going to be put up.
The Ganzo FH51. This model of knife is one of Ganzo's original knife designs, as far as I can tell. It's got a really cool shaped blade, reminiscent of a sheep's foot or Wharncliffe blade, probably more like a Wharncliffe. The blade is supposedly made out of D2 steel. Handles are made out of G10, and I actually like the design of this knife a lot, which kind of sucks because the liner lock doesn't lock the blade very well, honestly. On my personal example here, the blade does move back and forth a little bit. The liner lock, like I said, doesn't lock the blade completely. But other than that, I like this little knife, and it was like $30.
This is another older Barlow knife. This one's made by Cutmaster out of Utica, New York. The covers are made out of plastic. The bolster is steel. The blades are made out of carbon steel. The main blade is a clip point, and the secondary blade is a pen blade. This one is the best example of a old Barlow knife that I've gotten from a flea market over the years. I believe I bought this one when I was a child, pretty much, back before I knew anything about knives. And I just recently found it like a year ago, and I've carried it a couple times since then. And it's a nice little Barlow knife and an example of a less expensive Barlow maybe like 30 or 40 years ago. This is the Buck 371 Stockman. It's a Chinese-made buck knife that's a Stockman pattern, meaning it has 3 blades, a clip point, a sheep's foot blade, and a spay blade. The blades are made out of the Chinese Buck 420 J2 steel, I believe, which is a highly stainless steel. Buck says it has some sort of proprietary heat treatment. I don't think it's the Boss heat treatment, but I don't really know. This knife cost me like $20 at Walmart. This is the Kershaw Pub. It's a small knife with a sheep's foot blade that is under 2 inches. It also has a bottle opener and a screwdriver on it. It is a friction folder or maybe a slip joint, depending on how you want to classify it. And this one has a carbon fiber scale.
Klein Tools electrician's knife. It's kind of a copy of the old TL29s. It has 2 blades, a spear point blade and a screwdriver blade. The screwdriver blade also is a little bit sharpened so you can use it to strip wires, and it locks open using a brass liner. This knife was like $25, and it's an alright knife, except for the back springs are not as strong as I would like them to be. The blade does not stay open very well, and the knife doesn't snap open as much as I would like it to. This is one of very few fixed blade knives that I own. This is the Mora 511 Basic, Craftline or something like that. It's like a $10 knife made by Mora. It has a stick tang, it's not a full tang. It's Scandi ground and everything, and the blade is carbon, as you can probably kind of tell by the corrosion on there. But this is a good fixed blade knife. It works well. It sharpens up pretty easily because it's carbon steel. Getting used to sharpening a Scandi grind is interesting when you're not used to that, but yeah. And I of course went for the neon lime green that kind of matches my car. This is an old Imperial Barlow that I bought at a farmer's market a few weeks ago. This is back when Imperial was made in Providence, Rhode Island, and this one is one of those knives that's assembled kind of like a hubcap, meaning the whole side of the knife is held on with 2 like metal tabs. The blades are carbon steel, and as you can see, this knife I don't think has been used a whole lot. It has some sort of company branding on it, but I thought the knife was pretty cool, and it only cost me $5, so I went ahead and bought it. This is now my 3rd case trapper. This one is the brown saw cut bone covers. Once again, just like on my Barlow, the saw cut isn't very saw cut looking, but they do look good. And these blades are also in Case's chrome vanadium steel, which is a carbon steel. And this knife is probably the best fit and finished of all the Case knives that I've ever gotten. This is the Gerber Shark Belly. It's an American-made Gerber in Oregon. It has 420 HC steel, glass reinforced nylon handles. It's a lockback. It's a sheep's foot blade. And this is one of the very few knives that I still own that I just don't really like.